the October Revolution in 1964, you had the military coup in 1985, and you also had anti-regime demonstrations between 2011 and 13. So, in your view, Sharif, what's different this time? What make us maybe think about that something else will come out of it, as has happened in the past?
Well, the thing is that there is a debate in Sudan whether this thing began in Atbara or began in Damazin 3-4 days ago. This is happening within the forces which are in the field demonstrating. However, the fact that it began is in Atbara caught the attention of the people is also relates to history. Atbara, in Sudanese terms, is referred to as a city of iron and fire. It's the headquarters of the Sudanese railway, which is also the biggest organized labor. It's dismantled by this regime, and they thought they have tamed it, but things have been things never finish. Now, 1964, October 21st revolution was different than this in many aspects, but one aspect which comes quite clearly is the nature of the military men who took that power. Now, Aboud, the head of the regime who held power for 6 years, from 58 to 64, was the top military man in Sudan. He was ordered by the then sitting prime minister, who is also a military man, a colleague, to take over the power of the state. Now, people can debate today, by today's standards, you can debate about the constitutionality of that move, but that was the case. Aboud remained on his rank. He was a 3-star general, Farik in Sudanese, remained 3-star general until he relinquished power. When things start happening, steered by these students, University of Khartoum Students' Union, which was one of the strongest unions, and then headed by professionals, young professionals coming from Europe. Turabi, the man who made the coup now, was one of them, that kind of thing. So Aboud was not a power-hungry military general who took power to keep. Now, the second military takeover is completely of a different character. That was young officers who belonged to the so-called free officers. This is Arab nationalism kind of thing. They were all majors. They hunted for a bigger general, for a higher rank, to command the loyalty of the army after takeover. They landed on Nimeri, who was at the time 2 ranks ahead of majors, 2 ranks ahead of them. He was a colonel. Now, the character difference of this coup and the first coup, Nimeri jumped 2 ranks on the same day. He became 2-star general and 3-star general on the same day. Then ended up as a 4-star general. So this is this thing. Now the third one is also of a different character. This is a person this is an ideology, the National Islamic Front, which was in fact part of the democratic process. They were accorded even the privilege of the formal opposition in the parliament. Ali Osman, the one who is saying shoot to kill now, was the leader of the parliamentary opposition, but they decided to usurp power because they wanted to privatize the state, to have a jumping board for Islamicists to spread around the world. That's how they brought Bin Laden. That's how they created all this terrorism, which ended up bringing down the World Trade Centers and recently crushing pedestrians with trucks and so forth.
But one question I think everybody is wondering about, and that is, do these protests threaten Bashir? Is there a chance of having a political change in Sudan on the basis of the protests? And then, of course, you have talked about the role of the military in the past. then, in your view, Liv, do you think that the president has the full support of the security and the military at the moment, or can we actually see that, that there is some palace coup or, some kind of internal crack that can feed into and meet the aims of the protesters, and then you will have a change?
Well, you have three sort of branches. The one is called the NIS, which is the National Intelligence and Security, and those are the forces that are basically shooting demonstrators. And it's headed by Salah, which is a person that nobody wants to meet in their life. And they are fully supporting the president. And then you have the Sudan Armed Forces, and they have issued a statement supporting Bashir. However, there have been clashes between SAF officers and NIS officers in Port Sudan. So what happened was that a SAF officer intervened when NIS officers were battering protesters in Port Sudan, and he was arrested, despite that he showed his official ID. When he was released, he came back with his officers, and they destroyed the NIS office in Port Sudan. After that event, the NIS office in Port Sudan has actually been shut down and is no longer operating. When it comes to the third sort of branch, which is the RSF, the Rapid Support Force, when the protests broke out, the leader of this force actually went on TV and said that the government should not use their resources in suppressing the protesters, but to arrest corrupt officials. Okay, sorry, I forgot to put on the mic. Yeah, and rumor has it that he is put in house arrest. So there might be some potential cracks, but sort of how far they go and whether that will lead to sort of the army taking a role or the military taking a role, I'm very... maybe Sharif will be a better person to ask.
Yeah. So Sharif, what do you think? I mean, I'm also curious about the role of the opposition, for example. Are they providing an alternative? Are they strong enough to get into power if Bashir is threatened or is removed?
Well, the point I raised in the beginning about the different character of the people who are involved in these three coups was just to dramatize things to the limit so that people can see what's happening, but also there is another sense in which this one is unique because these young people who are now on the streets and who are running things, whether medical doctors or so forth, or those who have died, 25 years old, they are younger even than the coup, than this Bashir's coup. Bashir is 30 years old. They are 25 years old, and they are actually the products. Bashir and Ali Osman wanted to engineer the society. They have created a ministry which is called Ministry of Society Development or Planning. It's something out of the Iron Curtain they have created. But it shows they have decimally failed because those people who they have to engineer and make them, tuned up are the young people who are leading there. And these young people are coming from the same houses of the people who are running. Now they are shouting, now we are getting rebellion in our houses and we are being fought by ourselves. Now the Sudanese military, however you look at them, they are actually, first of all, the army, Sudanese army, is a privatized army. It has been created on the basis of the ideology, and they are reinforced with religious edicts, so they can kill with good consciousness because this is serving God, and with impunity, as you have seen. Now, when you go into details in it, the Rapid Support Forces is actually the Janjaweed, the JANJWEED, the Janjaweed, who used to kill them. But because of the international pressure, since the resolution 1556 of the UN way back in 2003. They have to park them. This is like baby park. They have to park them, so you give them good names. Sometimes you call them intelligence, border intelligence forces, gave them uniforms and numbers, and now they are called rapid support forces, and they are directly following Bashir.
So you
they don't get orders from anybody. It is Bashir.
So you don't really think there is any chance of an internal
No, actually the chap, the leader of this rapid support forces, who is now at least depicted to be a 3-star general, has never been to a military college. But he's a 3-star general. He takes his orders from Bashir, and the kind of the talk he made, which they decided to silence him, is a talk of somebody who didn't know what was his job. I mean, if you become in one day or few months become a 3-star general from nothing, you have a force 40,000-60,000, which are spent. The spending comes from the same budget. It's 70% and so forth. Then when he questions, there are corrupt people. I mean, that's why the economy is falling. He's forgetting that he's also a cause of that.
Yeah.
Now the NIF, the NIS, the National Intelligence and Security Service, are also part of this. They have done a lot of bad things. Many of their leaders are wanted by the ICC arrest warrant, who is their president, so they cannot really do anything. Now, one talks about there is also a private army, which the former vice president and the ideologue of the regime, Ali Osman Taha, called it a shadow force which will protect the regime. Those are the people who are shooting and killing these people. These are ideologic, hardcore people. There are many people in the army, from our sources, they say these people are on drugs, so that's why they can do this. So I don't think anything is going to happen, but many people have interest to save part of this regime.
Yeah.
Because many people from nothing became something. And with the corruption which Leif talked about, with kleptocracy, this is a union of corrupt thieves. So they have made wealth, they have made new life, so they have to keep part of that. Now, how that will work out? Now, these young people in the street will not accept a military coup, whatever happens, because they come from the same forces. They know the individual actors, and they have gone beyond the point of return. They will not accept that. What will happen? It is Bashir cannot use more force. Now you have seen him backing down in the last 1 or 2 weeks. Now he's talking about this law, which is humiliating the Sudanese women by lashing them, saying this is anti-Sharia. We have to get rid of it. So he's backing down. So what will happen? I think within this constellation of things, people who want to keep some of what they have stolen, people whose lives have changed and they have to live that way, I think Bashir, it is the problem of getting rid of Bashir will come from within them. I foresee, I will say it, I have said it before, I foresee a Ceausescu solution coming from within. This is first step before, there will be a long negotiations with these young forces, with all these other forces. And we forget also that there has been people like me and others who have been fighting this regime with arms for the last 20-something years. And these are forces which are intact with their arms. They are waiting on the sideline. So we are supporting the young people because they have transformed. Before, Sudan was so badly divided. And then they came with this slogan, which Leif said, just tasgut bas, just fall, that's all, something like that. And then they went before, people on the peripheries thought these young people are coming out because of bread prices, because of not having cooking gas, not having petrol, and all that. But they were so clever, they transformed this thing by talking about, you racist, hey, you racist, arrogant racist, all the countries Darfur. So they managed to recruit all of us. We love them. So I think things will go forward.
So this refers to, that Bashir was saying that those behind the protests are the Darfurians supported by Israel, yeah?
Yeah.
And then the protests responded saying, we are all from Darfur, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
You are a racist, you are arrogant racist, you are pompous racist, we are all from Darfur.
Yeah.
So
one of the, I think some news coverage has been coming through to our medias here in Norway and elsewhere in the Western world. And I think one of the things that the media has been picking up is the kind of brutality that the security forces and Bashir's men have been using to suppress protesters. And then, Sara, as a representative of the Doctors' Union, you have been following this very closely, and I think also you have observed that even hospitals have been a target of the regime. So can you tell us a little bit about why you think this has been unfolding in this brutal way? And then if that is somehow linked to the role of your union, the Sudan Doctors Syndicate.
First of all, thank you very much for the invitation. I'm very honored to be talking in this institute that has a very strong links with the University of Khartoum, which I'm a graduate of in 1998. The reason why the Sudan regime is using this excessive force, because it's the regime, in fact, collapsed, and all that's left is the use of violence, security forces, and militia. At the moment, I'm really very, I say, impressed by the title. It's a Sudan storm. It's the big threat they have faced since 2013. The doctors have been always at the front line with other professionals, and that's not new. In the 60s and in the 80s, there were professional associations and unions coming together to support the democratic change. So the presence of the Sudan Professionals Association is not a new part of the peaceful resistance in Sudan. We have to remember that most of the casualties that took place were shoot to kill, the head, neck, and chest. And there are no rescue teams, no ambulances. So the doctors arranged themselves in resuscitation team and rescue teams trying to help those who are injured as much as they can. But they became targeted as well. The doctors have started strike at the end of December and still continue in Sudan. It's a strike only from cold elective cases, and they have been covering emergencies. Therefore, there has been no risk on the people of Sudan. Because of the, I think the, would say, the national approval and trust of the Sudan Professional Association and its role this time in the Sudan uprising, that was a big threat for the government. So they have arrested thousands, and part of the leaders of the SDU, part of the leader of the Central Committee for Doctors are still detained. They have assaulted doctors inside the casualties. They have invaded Omdurman hospital, and they have used live bullets inside the hospital as well as tear gases. But I think the worst and the sad story is the targeting and killing of Babikir Abdelhamid, a very junior doctor who was attending casualties in Burri. And he raised his hand and declared that he is a doctor. However, he was shot from 20 meters, and sadly he died. This was, I would say, a trigger, not only for doctors and professionals, but as well for the people of Sudan, and brought us together. I would like to say that the resistance against this regime has been continuous since 1989, with ups and downs, and always the government managed to suppress it by different means, but mainly by sort of arrest, killing, and detention. This time it is different. People are no more, I can say, frightened, and there is unity among all different sectors in the community, and outside and inside Sudan.
Thank you very much. I just wondered also if you could say something about, you know, and maybe all of you. I mean, you say it's this time is different. In other places in Africa, you have seen youth being a very important agent in protests and maybe also in political changes, and social media. And maybe then also the traditional opposition has not really been managing to take the stage and be change agents. But youth, and in combination with social media and maybe also some kind of internal crack in the government party, has provided change. Do you see any similarities or any of the same type of protests and mechanisms in Sudan, or is it a resemblance of the past? Sara, if you can say something about that.
I think this time the uprising is unique, to be honest. In the 80s, I was between the primary school and what we call the middle school. So I remember April and Maris. I think this time it is different. The youth have played a major role. The social media has played a major role. And people are connecting and communicating, even just for arranging the protest and demonstration in a very organized way. I think recently what I always try to refer to is the African Spring, not the Arab Spring in a way which is negative, but about the African Spring, what happened is happening in Ethiopia, in Tunisia, in Rwanda. And it showed that despite the fact that these youths were born and they grow up under this regime, that they have flourished and they have developed different tools of resistance that the regime was not aware of, which is very, very interesting.
Thank you. What do you think, Sharif?
Well, I think also coming back to the differences from the two old, you know, we in the opposition and in the military side and the political side, we're dreaming from day one. We have been to opposition to rekindle things so that we have another October 1964 or April 1985. But we didn't. Although one of our major tools in changing this thing, apart from the military, because we were invited to take arms, was to effect a popular uprising, upheaval, explosion, like what this Dr. Sara and her colleagues managed to do. But we failed because our tools were old. But these young people, they use this social media thing is very unique. I don't know up to now how it works. I'm an old generation. But they really run rings around the regime. Security, intelligence, whatever. Nobody's able to catch up with them. These people are brutal brutes. They can shoot a person from close. They can torture, they can do everything. But they have never cracked the code, how these people organize these things. So this aspect is very unique, in fact. And this is one of the strengths of this last thing. And I think today is 50, probably 55 51st day or 53rd day of the continuous demonstrations. So to keep it that way, and with all this, with mobilizing all these people is something unique.
So it seems resilient compared to the other ones. But then, Liv, we need to open up the floor for questions as well. But I want to ask you about the role of the international community. I mean, there have been some reactions. If you can describe to us what have the international partners of Sudan or others said about the protests and Bashir's crushing of the protests. Have there been any reactions at all?
Well, a lot of the countries in the region have proclaimed support for Bashir because they want stability, I assume, including South Sudan. From the international community, there has been some, but not a lot. I mean, the so-called troika of Canada, Norway, UK, and the US, who have been vital to the sort of peace processes between North and South Sudan back in 2005. They have issued statements of concern about the brutality and especially the targeting of hospitals and doctors, and so have the World Health Organizations. I think maybe Sara can talk a bit about the UK reaction, but I think in my personal view, the reaction has been too soft. Sort of a statement of concern is not enough. And for Norway's reaction, I find it very peculiar how we have really engaged with the protest in Venezuela and offered Norway's help, and also publicly proclaimed Norway's support for the demands of the protesters, while in Sudan, we have not done the same to Sudan, despite the fact that we have been a partner to Sudan for a very long time and been an important player into the peace processes. Yeah, what can I say?
I would like just to continue on the point of Norway. In fact, I'm a zebra, so I belong here and I belong in Sudan and many other places. So I can really demand from Norway to have a position. That's my democratic right. But Norway has not has a position alone. Norway has been always sandwiched between Canada, Troika. I mean, what's that, Troika? Why couldn't be a position, an independent position for Norway? It has invested so much in Sudan until the two states have become, and then it doesn't have any position. It has to wait a so-called troika. Now the British are everybody in this world, in the international community, say, of nations. When you go and approach them on Sudan, they say, well, the British know, let the British go first, and then we follow.
So what has been the reaction of the UK on these protests, Sara?
So I completely agree that the response from the British government has not been satisfactory for the Sudanese diaspora. You know, there is a big Sudanese diaspora in the UK, and it has not been satisfactory to the people of Sudan as well. They have been approached by different groups collectively to raise our concerns. We're trying to highlight, first of all, that at least they should be neutral, and they should understand that the current regime, if it continues after this uprising, they will apply more austerity measures. And that will be reflected in Europe as an increased wave of irregular immigration. Because of the financial issues and to get more loans, the Sudanese government is well known for its lack of transparency and commitment, and therefore they can get money or loan from any source, which can mean that they can go back and support terrorism more than now, and that will affect the regional and the international security. We always like to, we have raised these concerns. They are as watching carefully, but they have not been that responsive. But We feel that the opposition party has been now interested in the UK, which is another important voice. The Trade Union Congress is supporting the uprising and provided motions. So we are working on different parts in the UK to put pressure on the British government to consider supporting the people of Sudan. But I think it is important that, as Sharif said, it's not only the United Kingdom that should be the main supporter to this uprising. We are expecting all the EU members to be in support of the people's request and rights.
Liv, you wanted to add something?
Yeah, I forgot something very important, actually. I think that one of the reasons why there are not very strong reactions is because there is also a lot of European countries that have that would benefit from regime stability. Because Sudan has received massive amounts of aid from the EU Emergency Fund, basically to stop immigration to Europe. So the EU have made Sudan like a legitimate partner in this sort of trend to keep them or help them where they are or keep them where they are, including training for intelligence and top-notch sort of security gear to monitor refugees and human traffickers. And of course, this equipment is now being used to suppress the protests. So, I mean...
Yeah, it's quite paradoxical,
as always, things are not black and white. It's just a lot of grey and...
But I think we need to open up the floor for questions, and maybe there will be a chance for you also to raise...
It's okay.
Yes? Now, we have about 15 minutes. So if you have questions or comments, please raise your hands.
Hi, thank you for an enlightening introduction to the situation in Sudan right now. I'm just wondering if you guys see that how is the involvement of the diaspora? We see in some other situations that the diasporans are more war hungry, or that because they're not actually present in the country. But do you see that there's a divide between the diaspora and the people of Sudan, or the people in Sudan, or how is it?
Should I take that?
Sharif, yeah?
I think that was a very important aspect which we didn't touch upon. In fact, the internal movement, those young people on the streets who are commanding the streets, are getting a lot of inspiration and support from what's happening in Sudanese diaspora. In the last few years, I remember when I came to Bergen some 30-something years ago, we were 5-6 people from Sudan in whole Norway. But now tens of thousands of people who have been generated by the genocide in Darfur, what's happening in Nuba Mountain, barrel bombing in Nuba Mountains and Blue Nile, and then the economic crash have generated people from the center. Tens of thousands of Sudanese, young Sudanese from New Zealand in the east and Australia, through Europe, Asia, and to California in the west. There has been continuous demonstrations, support demonstrations. Here in Oslo, despite it's not a very big community, they have been demonstrating, standing in front of the parliament and also in front of the embassy and sending, that kind, organizing to support also materially, that kind. I'm in Bergen, I'm in Norway, where we were only 3 people from Sudan in the university here some 30 years ago. Then I'm coming actually I came from Paris yesterday. And in Paris, the diaspora community, young people, are so big, and I attended even one of those demonstrations. We walked 3.5 kilometers to the parliament and to the Ministry of Foreign Affairs in London, in New York, in Amsterdam, you name it, that's happening. And daily, I think they are supporting, these young people are supporting their young counterparts inside. And they are also sprouting with organizations which to organize some material and other support. So the diaspora has been very active.
Is this situation also for you in the UK, Sara? I mean, what's the role of the diaspora, Sudanese diaspora there in Great Britain?
The Sudanese diaspora in the UK have been very well organized. We have what we call SATU, is the Sudanese Association and Trade Unions. We work closely with the Sudanese communities. There are every Saturday there are demonstrations in different parts. We have signed a generic letter to the MP in the parliament, so we have encouraged everybody to sign the letter, which is asking the British government to support the people of Sudan. As I said, we have been in touch with different sort of media and trade unions, and we have arranged different symposiums as well. The Sudan Doctor Union, for example, branch in the UK, has been as well contributing to writing, the manifestos for what will happen in the next during the transitional period in health services, for example. And my colleagues in different sectors have been involved. We are closely linked with the people inside Sudan. We believe that they are the main control. They are the ones who are leading, but we are there to support them, but not to take over.
Is there any other questions?
Yes, hello. As I've seen in the news, and correct me if I be wrong, like the demonstration are basically not in the capital, Al-Khartoum. They are only in the countryside and other cities. So to what extent that would help al-Bashir to defeat the revolution, that the capital is not included?
No, then I think you're a bit misinformed. I mean, there are protests and demonstrations all over the country, including in Khartoum. But what I think the government is struggling with is that the presence of the security that are basically clamping down on the protests are more concentrated in certain areas. But that is also what makes these uprisings have like a really potential force, because they are all over the place. And this is what makes it unique, because people are like the youth is of course playing a vital role, but for me what is unique to see is that this really goes across sort of urban, rural, it's all regions, it's across generation, it's across ethnic groups. So it's really like Sudanese people standing together, men, women, there is not really like one group of people that is out there. It's everyone, and they're everywhere. Yeah.
I think it's in Khartoum. Khartoum is every day there are demonstrations, but these young people, as you said, cleverly decentralized the thing, so it's happening here and there. So they are on every day. Even in small villages, the street is boiling.
Any other questions? Yes.
Thank you very much. To what degree are these protests and demonstrations impacting the non-citizen population, the refugees, the migrants, and other temporary or supposedly temporary populations?
Well, I think in the beginning there was one of the biggest demonstrations was in the biggest internally displaced people's camp in Kolba near Niala. That has been part. And I get also even in the refugee camps outside the country there has been demonstrations. But the point is these people, the refugees, have been living this hell for the last many years, so they are not new to this. They have been bombed out from their villages, so they know. But in Darfur, there is also Darfur is under emergency laws, so people have to be careful. I mean, now what will happen? But they are taking part in that. So everywhere it's happening.
Is it affecting the non-Sudanese? Like for example, there's a growing Syrian population in Khartoum. Do you know anything?
No, I don't think it's affecting. It's not affecting. The Syrians are privileged, actually. when you look at the internal displaced Sudanese, the Syrians are privileged. They are part of the business community. They are given passports. They are given nationalities. This is an Arab-seeking government which is in power. So they are.
So, Sara, do you have any comments about any of the questions? Because it's not so easy for you to just interrupt.
So I don't think it's a centralized movement at all. It actually involved different parts of the Sudan. And the SPA, the Sudan Professional Association, will release a timetable every week. And surprisingly, other cities and other sort of communities and villages will participate even if they were not part of the timetable. We have to as well realize that there are other tools that are being used. It's not only the protest. There are different sectors that have been participating in strikes, like journalists, lawyers, the teachers. We have to remember that yesterday there were professionals standing in front of their workplaces in different parts, and that includes the big sector. We have to remember that there are messages, written messages, and written leaflets, and has been distributed. So there are different types of tools that are being used for the the resistance, aiming to reach the stage of the complete sort of national strike and the peaceful step down and handing of the power. We know it's a challenge. We know it's not going to be easy, but there is hope and there is fear.
Thank you. Any final comments or questions?
Thank you so much. As a UIB alumna, my question to Liv and Sharif and to all of us who belongs to the University of Bergen, what do you think about our role for supporting the Intifada? What can we do?
Well, then the University of Bergen have to answer that.
No, but it should start from us, who was like other Sudanese who had been studying or working at the University of Bergen, or as Norwegian researchers who do research in Sudan.
Well, of course, this is a voluntary, work which is like any, helping refugees and all that. You can strengthen the Sudanese community here who are standing all over. And as a university, I don't know how much is a university can get involved in this, but as individuals, of course, the door for volunteering to help is open. I resigned for two reasons. One is that it wouldn't be compatible with my job description as a researcher to run around doing the things which I was doing, and then also not to get the University of Bergen involved, because they were very interested. Whenever a researcher goes to Sudan, they immediately ask about Sharif and, with his Jewish wife, and all that is going to Israel, all those kinds of things. So I don't know. The university have to answer that.
But Sara had a comment as well. Yeah.
First of all, I want to say hello to my colleague Hueda. It's nice to see you, Ayani. And I think there is a major role that a university can play in a neutral way. One of these is the symposium, brainstorming, increasing awareness among the academics. And there as well is a future role in the transitional period, because it's going to be very difficult to rebuild, reconstitute the Sudan. As we know, all of the infrastructure is destroyed. And to have people who are interested in Sudan, who know Sudan, who have links in Sudan, I think we are very privileged. And therefore, we are expecting further support from your institution.
Okay, so, yeah.
Leave.
Well, I don't represent University of Bergen. Just I am a researcher at CMI, but I think what we are already trying to do, I mean, for one thing, like I said, like in Norwegian media, there has not been given a lot of attention to Sudan. So then I feel like it's my role to put Sudan in the spotlight, to try to challenge the government to take a stand. Beyond that, I'm asking the question back to you. Is there something we don't do or are already doing that we can do? And then this is a good opportunity to say that we are planning a little impromptu sort of social media campaign after this event with Rafto Foundation, with people who would like to stand out and support the so-called Habub or Sudanese storm and show their support for the Sudanese through that campaign. But yeah, I give the question back to you, Hawaida. What do you think we should do?
When I came to Norway 20 years ago, we used to have like a Sudanese community, and then we used to meet. I think, as far as I can remember, every once a month. But I don't see that now. I mean, it's like we as Sudanese and also like those researchers who do something about Sudan. It's not only Norwegians, but I remember we had Italians and others. But now this is stopped. I don't know why. So, yeah, me neither. So, and I mean, since I stayed long. So I know people individually, but like we don't have any association, something in common that we meet and then we discuss not only the Intifada problem, but also like some issues. For example, if a Norwegian or a Sudanese researcher would like to go to Sudan, how can we help him or her? Or if the people in the Sudanese one at the University of Bergen, how can we help them? For example, if they have an obstacle with their research, and yeah. So I think we need to gather ourselves first, and then sit together, and then yeah, maybe we can do something together. And I give the floor to Tina.
Thank you very much. I think it has been very, very interesting to listen to you. And personally, I've had a long collaboration with University of Khartoum and also University of Science and Technology in Omdurman. But I think at least the most important we can do is to keep up collaborating and not stop. And as we did in the last crisis we had a personal contact. Although the government said we shouldn't collaborate with Sudan, we kept up doing it. We have a very, very long-standing collaboration with the universities, and we want to keep it. And also, I think your idea, I support it very much. To be visible and to really to fight for what we think is important for Sudan. We can do something at least, and we cannot stand behind and say we cannot do something. We should at least worry about the situation and support wherever we can.
Yes, but I think this was a very good end of the debate we had here today. Unless there is somebody else who really wants to say something, I think we're going to end. I would really like to thank Sara from the UK for your contributions, both as a health professional and as an activist, and for Sharif and Liv who've been here sharing their impressions and views on the Sudanese situation. But I think we have all become more informed, and I hopefully also challenged to not keep quiet. Thank you very much, everybody.
Thank you.
Yeah.